welcome to another episode of OpenIntro with your host, myself, Joel Blake. It's the podcast where we meet the unmeetables, and today's guest is someone who I've seen from afar for many, many years, and I'm sure many of you have also. Is a fantastic gentleman with a great set of values in terms of what he does, which we'll talk about in this podcast. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce the amazing Rob Law. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Hi, Joel. Thanks for having us. Yeah, really good.
Not a problem at all. I reckon we're going to have a really great conversation because I really think your journey epitomises that real entrepreneur's journey at its heart. And, you know, we're going to dive into that because I think there's so many gems and so many lessons that you've learned that would be so grateful to share with our audience. But what I really like to start with really is to really strip it back a little bit and really get into your why, really, you know. So why do you do what you do, Rob?
Well, I guess I'm all about kind of ideas and impact. So I love to help support businesses and entrepreneurs to kind of really fine tune their idea and make sure it can have some impact. I guess that all stems from being very creative, going through a product development career and being a product designer. And I just love seeing ideas being realised and become successful. So quite often I'm helping people with fine-tuning those ideas and making sure they're the right ideas to bring to market, whether that's a physical product or a service. But then having commercialised an idea for 2 decades with Trunki, it's knowing the kind of the holistic view of all the business challenges and supporting them through all the different areas from kind of like a bird's eye view of understanding what the business needs to be able to make that product successful.
No, amazing. And obviously, you know, people obviously know you more for Trunki than some of your other ventures, but, you know, for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about where Trunki started and just a little bit about that journey, because I think it's very interesting from an entrepreneur's point of view for sure. So tell us a little bit about yourself and Trunki.
Well, Trunki came about way back in 1997 while I was studying product design at the University of Northumbria up in Newcastle. And as a second-year design student, we entered a national luggage design competition. It was sponsored by a large plastics manufacturer. So I was thinking about plastic luggage, but went to a local department store to look for inspiration. And back then, hard moulded suitcases were quite fashionable from the likes of Carlton and Samsonite. But they were all pretty black and boring, and I remember standing in this luggage section department where everything was black, and I drifted off, looking around the store. Maybe it's because I'm a big kid at heart. I found myself in the kids' toy section, looking at ride-on toys, and I guess the eureka moment came, thinking, well, actually, these ride-on toys, they were manufactured using a technique that wastes a lot of the internal space. So you remember these ride-on tractors that have a little seat that you can lift up with enough storage space for an apple or something. And then reflecting back on these hard-moulded adult suitcases, it was like, well, maybe you could make a ride-on toy that maximise that internal space using the injection moulding technology that the adult luggage was using, but sculpt it, make it ergonomic for kids to ride and make it look fun and cute. And I know I didn't have kids at the time, but I travelled a bit and knew that kids got bored in airports. So that was the crux of the idea.
Okay, excellent. It's funny, those eureka moments come when we least expect them, and for many entrepreneurs who have that eureka moment, it is absolutely life-changing. But how did you find those early days of convincing, whether it's investors, clients, customers, on the novelty of the actual Trunki suitcase itself?
Well, back then I had no ambition to run a business. I just wanted to be a product designer and create cool stuff.
Yeah.
But the judges, I won the competition, and the judges took me aside and told me I had quite a commercial idea. Maybe I should try and license it. So I tried to find manufacturers to take it on. As I did, again, I didn't want to run the business myself, and went down to pitch to Carlton, who are a large British manufacturer back in the day. Really excited, showed them my presentation boards, had my prototype, told them we were going to revolutionise family travel together. And I didn't really get much feedback from them in this meeting. I remember it being very quiet. And they said, Rob, you do realise we make luggage? I'm like, yeah, we're going to revolutionise family travel. And they said, but you've invented a toy, so I think you should probably go and see a toy company. So that was my first rejection. But always the optimist. It was like, well, one door's closed, maybe another's opened, and maybe it is a toy and I should approached some toy companies, and you'll never guess what they said. They thought I'd invented some luggage. So I kind of went through this period of manufacturer ping pong, I call it. But I was studying product design. I graduated with first class honours. I worked in New York and Australia for some of London's leading consultancies. So this was always a bit of a side project. And eventually I found a toy company to take it on. We signed a global licensing deal. It was all very exciting. Their first customer was out in the Middle East. And they called it the Fula Trunki travel case because they had a brand out there that's the equivalent of Barbie but more culturally relevant. And it ran a national TV ad across the Middle East, and it was all really exciting. And fast forward 3 years, and this toy company still only had one customer in the Middle East. You sold Trunki anywhere else.
Many early businesses, isn't it? You have one big customer, and then you put all your resources into trying to serve the needs of that one customer, isn't it?
And eventually, this company went bust. And they went into voluntary liquidation. But at the time, I was working as a design consultant in Bristol for an agency, and our largest customer was Unilever, and I was working with all the major FMCG brands, Lynx, Dove, Domestos, but I was just creating products that people didn't need, and most of them required batteries, like electronic deodorant cans, electronic bleach dispensers. It was just like, ever since I was 14, I wanted to be a product designer, and kind of by the time I got to my late 20s, I was struggling to get out of bed in the morning, even though I had all these great clients. I just didn't feel like I was making the world any better. So when I took that phone call, I thought actually maybe I should have a go myself. And actually working with these brand managers gave me the insight of, well, maybe Trunki isn't a toy or a piece of luggage. Maybe it's just a lifestyle brand that can be marketed to parents, and it doesn't really matter what category it sits in. So kind of taking that gem, I took the project back, rebranded it, and the rest is history.
It strikes me that in your early journey, you were very clear on what you wanted your outcome to be in terms of product design, but you were very flexible to adopting a lot of those eureka moments, a lot of those insights. And it strikes me that those insights changed the direction of your journey at those different touch points when you met them. Did you recognise your agility at that time, where you just felt that just felt like the right thing to do? Because often as entrepreneurs, we sometimes don't see the long-term outcome of a very simple decision, but it strikes me that you were very much embracing of those kind of forks in the road, if you like.
Well, I think to some extent, it's the product designer mindset of problem solving. So you can never be too precious about any idea you have. You've got to get those ideas out there, get feedback, iterate, try again, and just listen to the market. But I've sat in many focus groups over the years, and it's very difficult sometimes to really see through what people are actually saying and what they really want. So it is a bit of a skill. You can't just go with what everyone says all the time. It's you've got to navigate through that feedback. But I think you can't be too precious. That's one of my big learnings. You just can't be too precious about your idea. You've got to listen, get feedback, and keep evolving. I think a great example of that might be when I invented Trunki, the idea was partly formed by some research I did that children shouldn't carry heavy bags. So that's why I put a tow strap on there, and the kids could tow it along, and then parents could tow their kids on it. But it didn't have carry handles on, because I didn't want the kids picking up the bag, because the research said that it could damage their spines. And then after launching the product, the number one customer complaint we got was, put some bloody carry handles on it. I put it the escalators. It sense from the child point of view, but parents are having to use this product too.
Absolutely.
And I kind of use that example quite often when I'm talking about intellectual property, because Trunki itself can't be patented. You can't patent the idea of a ride-on suitcase.
Okay. It's
just a concept. You can patent a technical innovation, and the clasps that we reinvented at one point were patented, but an overall concept can't be patented. But say it was, and the patentable part was that you didn't need handles on the bag and you just towed it.
Right.
I could have invested hundreds of thousands of pounds, which I didn't have at the time, on patenting something that then turns out, that's not a commercial advantage. So I think you've got to be really careful with IP and patents, and you really need to know what it is that customers really want before you kind of really invest in that. Yeah,
that's really important, because a lot of the IP value in many businesses at a surface level, it's easy to probably see what that is, but you have to make sure it's still right for what your customers want long term and where the business is going long term. And
I give quite a lot of advice around IP. I mean, Trunki itself had a registered design that protected the shape, and because it was such a unique product, that scope of protection was quite wide. But at the end of the day, it was always about the brand for me, and that's when we exited. It was that people were buying the brand, not that we had a load of patents. It was that customer love we had built with our brand name. And over the years, we must have had about 65 copies. So lots of people have copied the shape or similar shape and the concept of a ride-on suitcase. But actually, the challenge we had of trying to find the right department for it, because when I launched, the luggage buyers sent me to the toy buyers sent me to the apparel buyers, and finding the home within a traditional channel was very challenging. And it ended up being adopted by the baby market. So we've sold mainly in baby retailers, and then our international distributors were mainly baby product resellers. But all the copies came from the toy market or some luggage companies. So actually, it was quite interesting to see that most of those products failed because they didn't have the right route to market. But you can have these copies, but it's all about the branding, brand positioning, and really know where you sit in that market.
I think that's really important, that having an IP strategy is highly underrated, it strikes me, in businesses today. Often you may think, okay, I've got a trademark, I've got copyright, I've got a patent, and that's it. And that will be protecting me forever, or protecting the business forever. But it strikes me there with your experience that you use that as a real formal strategy of growth for the organisation in terms of the partnerships that you had, in terms of the reach. Which I think is absolutely commendable, and I think many entrepreneurs need to really think about that, particularly product-based businesses really see your IP strategy as important as any other strategy in the business, particularly about building that moat around that business.
Multiple points. When we did our private equity raise, they were blown away by the amount of IP we actually had, and we were head and shoulders above most companies they look at. When we exited, we had a really strong IP portfolio that kind of helped build that value.
I mean, obviously many people know of you from your Dragon's Den journey and all the activity and incidents and the journey from that point. And obviously for those who want to learn more about that, please, they can search for that and have a look at that. But what was the biggest thing that you learned from that Dragon's Den journey, and what took you from the beginning of that learning to the exit, in terms of, how did you use that learning from that experience?
Yeah, so to remind people who may not be familiar, I went on Dragon's Den on season 3. This is 2006. Pitched Trunki. It just literally had the first container arrive in the UK 2 weeks prior, so I just started trading. I didn't really have any national retail distribution because I was still being passed around all the different departments. The pink Trunki Trixie ended up at Thetis's feet, and he ripped off the toe strap, made a load of theatrical TV, and all the dragons started lambasting me, saying your business is worthless, I could design a better product, don't see business opportunity, all this kind of stuff. So when I went on the show, the pitch went perfectly. I towed Richard Farley around the studio, it was all going really well, and then there's this kind of almost out of body experience where everything just kind of tumbled out of control, but I couldn't understand why. It's like, well, if the toe strap pulled off, it didn't break, it pulled off, we can make that stronger. I just didn't understand why they were treating me so badly. And I kind of struggled to really get them round because I just didn't understand why. And I guess they were playing up to the cameras to some extent. By the time I got to the top of the steps, I thought, oh, that's a shame. I could really have done with that investment and mentoring. By the time I got to the bottom of the steps, I was wishing I'd invented a time machine and not a ride-on suitcase. But the BBC told me they'd give us plenty of notice before it aired, and I kind of forgot about it for a little while. And then season 3 started, no word from the BBC. We were halfway through the season, still no word from the BBC, and I started to think I got away with it. But just to make sure, I'd go down to the local newsagents, pick up the Radio Times and check their TV schedule. And one day, it was like, 9 o'clock, Tuesday, BBC 2, and the title was Wheelie Rubbish.
Wow.
the colour drains from my face. I'm like, I thought I got away with it. Oh, bugger.
Wow.
So on the walk home, I was thinking, well, I've got a website. I'm probably going to get a load of web traffic, but I might be bust the next day. I'm probably not going to sell a single one. But what can I do to maximise that opportunity of getting that web traffic? Excuse me. So I thought I'll post a survey on the website just to get customer feedback and just make sure my marketing message was right and the concept was landing, and just try and use that as an opportunity to get some more feedback. And that night, over 3,000 people filled in the survey with phenomenal words of support. And it was a real turning point. And in hindsight, it was like manufacturers didn't get the product, investors didn't get the product, retailers didn't get the product, everyone in the supply chain didn't get the product apart from the most important one, and that was the customer.
And that's all you needed.
And yeah, we sold out that night, got into John Lewis the next week, and it really kind of just took off. We actually couldn't keep up with demand for the next couple of years.
Wow, fantastic.
But that catapulted us into the national psyche. So that's the best marketing that could have ever happened. So something I wish I could erase from history turned out to be the best possible thing. Yeah. So kind of that kind of PR spin has always then kind of reinforced what I've done with Trunki. So I've always looked for PR opportunities, a bit like Richard Branson to some extent. So when I got I was fortunate enough to get an MBE from the Queen. I think you've got one too, haven't you? And I took a Trunki along, dressed it up as a corgi, thinking maybe I could get a picture with the Queen and the corgi.
Yeah, I see what you're trying to do there.
Yeah. And I thought, when I went to receive my award, there were all these guards with rifles, and I was like, probably shouldn't approach the Queen with
maybe
box. But we did meet the Queen's dog walker in the Palace Gardens later and got some amazing PR photos. Excellent. So always looking for a PR hook.
Yeah, I really love that, Rob, because you know, as you quite rightly said, what could have been what was the most catastrophic thing to happen at that time became the best thing. And again, it's that eureka moment, isn't it, where you've taken that insight and said, right, how do I make the best of it? And that growth mindset that you had versus the emotion of how you felt. You know, as an entrepreneur, you know, that must have been really important for you to make that distinction between how am I feeling and how is this going to affect the growth of the business versus how do I leverage this opportunity with a growth mindset to make the best of it for the business.
Yeah. Well, I think I've been fine-tuned over the years with multiple setbacks. So in business, just after Dragon's Den filmed, but before it aired, we had the luggage ban. So there's You may remember a van drove into Glasgow airport and it was the height of the liquid bomb threats, and the government decided to ban hand luggage. And I just launched my children's hand luggage brand, and this was leading up to the summer, so it was peak summer sales season. And my product was banned. So kind of a key learning from that was, although I was on my own in my bedroom, I didn't have a team at the time, I was trying to pivot my marketing message, but also it was then expanding internationally, because that only really affected the UK and US. So then it was a real focus on international sales, which helped accelerate that side of the business.
Excellent. So
I was always looking at kind of facing up to these challenges really quickly. I think in life and in business, we're always throwing curveballs and challenges, and the sooner you face up to them and overcome them, the sooner you can keep growing and moving forward. But if you're always kind of scared of facing up to that challenge, you're just going to delay any success. And also the mindset of you want to get to A and you're at B, and there's a challenge in the way. Success is getting to C, like still getting to where you originally wanted to get to isn't necessarily success anymore, because you've had to overcome a challenge.
Yeah.
But you've overcome it and you got somewhere else, and there are more opportunities for you. So it's always kind of that, as you say, to some extent, the growth mindset, but embracing challenges, seeing them as a learning opportunity and not something to not get out of bed for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always been taught in my entrepreneurial journey that adversity brings a lesson and a blessing, and the lesson is as you say, it's that evolution of, okay, that might have been the goal, but now it's something else, and how do I now get to that next phase? Because when you get there's going to be another journey that awaits. Yeah. The blessing is having that knowledge, because you get taught something, but you have to sometimes go for the main challenges to understand just how important what you're being taught actually is.
Yeah, so I mean, just winding that back a little bit with what we've already been talking about. So the challenge of trying to find which market the suitcase should be in, should it be in luggage or in toy? And it turned out it was in baby. And because it was in baby, all these copies we've had over the years never really had any success. So if it was a really clear market fit, then everyone else could have had a go, and they'd have had those routes to market, and we might have really struggled. But because we had that niche that no one else could really access or understand, that hard work in the early days paid off and almost created a moat to some extent around our IP.
Fantastic. And so where did the actual Trunki journey end up at the point of exit? You know, I mean, what was revenue? How many locations were you in? What did the business look like from at that point?
Well, at peak before COVID, we were about 10 million revenue. We've been trading for 18 years when I sold. This was 2023. We'd sold over 5 million suitcases around the world, had developed a whole product portfolio from car seats that double as backpacks and kids' swim bags and children's range. So we had a nice portfolio of travel gear for helping get your kids out and about. But then COVID hit and we had a couple of really bad years because travel was banned. And that was really tough. And the challenge we had there was really to conserve that cash. We pretty much had to go into hibernation. Really frustrating because I wanted to be able to create content to help toddlers who are stuck at home, but our marketing guys were on furlough. We tried a few different things. We tried doing some toddler face masks. They're really innovative, but it turned out toddlers didn't need to wear face masks in the end. Tried a few things and it was just really frustrating. So it was just like having to conserve all your resource to just have enough cash to just survive. But when the travel bans lifted, it went pretty crazy, and because we'd reshore production, we were able to react to that market demand really quickly. But your question was more about kind of what the business looked like. So yeah, we were probably about 6 million turnover, maybe back to about 6 after COVID, and that's when we exited. And we ran a competitive process with a couple of businesses, but it felt like it was time for a new chapter, try something different after 18 years. And I had started developing this idea of a new brand to kind of focus on that.
So tell us more about kind of, you know, where you are now and what are you currently working on? What's next for Rob in all that you're doing?
Well, there's a couple of things I'm doing. So the new brand's called ZP, and it's a brand to help families sleep better, mainly around toddlers initially. And we support that with a digital product. I've probably got one here. Let me show you. This is a little sleep clock.
Okay.
So it changes colour, so kids understand when it's time to get out of bed, because that's one of the main challenges us parents experience. Excellent. Is getting up too early and waking us up. So we support that with some media as well. So we do a really meditative sleep podcast to help kids sleep better and get in the right mindset for sleep, and that's really popular. And essentially we're the future strategy for that brand is to merge media and physical product. So that's really exciting. We're using AI a lot in supporting that business and doing some really cool stuff. And then another business I've got is helping brands succeed on Amazon. So I have an Amazon marketing agency that I run with my brother, and we also are we're supporting some brands as well with product development, so helping them get their ideas to market, whether that be really understanding the market niche through to helping develop that product, helping them source manufacturers, and then offering some commercial support while they're in the market as well. So that's really exciting. And then I've always been asked to do business speaking events, so sharing my story, sharing my learnings, inspiring the next generation and other businesses, mainly in the SME space. But yeah, kind of talking about all my experience and key lessons. But what I find most useful is not talking about the things that went well, talking about the things that didn't go well.
That's right.
And that's where you really get that in-depth learning that you can share.
Yeah, no, and amazing. And it's great that you're taking that product journey and utilising it in so many ways, but still staying focused on that children aspect. You know, I think that's really commendable, and there is a lot of support needed for children in many different ways. So it's great that you're moving ahead still in that area of work. I guess the other thing I wanted to ask, Rob, is in terms of your sense of leadership as an individual, how has that changed from the kind of early days of wanting to be a product designer to going through all that you've gone through to where you are now? How would you describe your leadership style? How has it evolved, I guess?
Yeah, it was a huge change. So as a product designer back in the day, you would just go to work and work till like 9 o'clock and be happy to be eating pizza in the office. And you just work really hard. And then I started employing people and they weren't staying in the office till 9 p.m.
They got straight up.
Even at 8 o'clock.
Starts in tumbleweed going down the office.
So yeah, I then quickly learned that build the brand, I needed a really good team, and to have a really good team, I needed to learn how to be a leader. So I started reading lots, trying to figure it out. I had a few mentors. A great book that really opened my eyes was Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Yeah, great.
I really embraced that as a great leadership kind of Bible, and also being able to delegate and to trust people, to give them a go. And quite often you find with your first team, they're all very enthusiastic people, but they're not as experienced because you can't afford that experience. And then that team ends up having to evolve a bit quite often, and you have to hire in that experience, and those people move on. And initially I was like really disappointed when people would leave the business as well. I took it really personally, but then a bit later on it's like, this is amazing actually. I've been able to grow that person, give them some new skills, they've been able to practice those skills, and now they're able to get an even better job. And I completely flipped my mindset. It was like I was really pleased for them when they did move on because of the journey we had shared together, rather than being resentful.
Yeah.
My investment in them, I wasn't going to be able to benefit from anymore. So that was really interesting. But yeah, just kind of being really humble and using humility a lot has worked well. So we've had a lot of challenges. Certainly through COVID was ridiculous. But kind of talking really personally about it, supporting the team in any way you can, and always having a door open really worked well. And yeah, for me, it's never been about money. So the team saw that. They just wanted to join me and the brand to kind of really help improve people's lives by travelling and experiencing more things around the world, rather than it all being about profit.
Yeah, and you know what? Putting the business to one side, I think we forget, or it's easy to forget sometimes, that this is about people first. Without people, you don't have a business. And I know it's a cliche, and I know it's an obvious thing to say, but as a leader, it's a lonely journey too. And I think people often forget that as leaders, you go through your own challenges with the weight of responsibility, that your decisions have an impact on so many people's lives. You know, I see that in my own business, where you're really having to consider every single thing to the minute detail, and people, whilst also having to hold in all your own emotion and your own feelings at times about your worries on the output and the impact on other people, and particularly those who supported you in the early days in areas that you probably didn't even recognise in yourself, and is almost like a level of survivor's guilt almost, because you've survived certain challenges where others may not have, and you're still in a position where you can still do more, but you're still on that lonely journey as a leader too. And so
I definitely felt really lonely in the early days, so I ended up joining some business mentoring groups to try and get that support, and learned a lot from them. And actually quite a lot of the the early challenges were around people and people issues, and that experience kind of really helped. There's a lot of learning there, but yeah, for sure, it was definitely quite lonely. And also, you're kind of, when you're struggling to make payroll, you're the last one to get paid, aren't you? So you're always looking after the team first and foremost.
Absolutely.
So you need people who kind of respect and appreciate what you do for them, and in return, you do what you can for them.
I think the unification of that human spirit, and I'm not talking, let's get around a campfire and start chanting Kumbaya and toasting marshmallows around it, but that sense of unity and that human spirit and that desire to come together to all be the respective piece in the puzzle to achieve this goal.
I think one of the big learnings for me within that leadership journey was around psychometrics.
Yeah.
How people think very differently. I'm very driven and have a clear vision and aren't too fussed about the detail. And other people really stress about the detail. So really understanding those different communication preferences and different mindsets really helped us too. And we kind of did a lot of training with the team to help departments talk better. And you've always got your classic sales team versus the finance team. So trying to bring those guys together more and understand their differences to be able to get each other to do what they needed.
It's that sense of inclusion, isn't it? It's inclusion is often used as a very much of a political hot potato, but the reality is that at its essence is exactly what you just described. It's knowing who the differences are or where the differences are and bringing those together in a way that they may not even see. You've got to have that foresight, haven't you, as particularly as the leader, and back yourself to back them to all work together to back the vision, which is not without its own challenges. So as we get to kind of closing, Rob, I think you've really shared a lot in terms of, and thank you for your humility. Definitely has shone through in terms of the personal journey, the highs and lows of that. But in terms of, I guess, moving forward, would you like to maybe share a closing thought for those who might be watching this podcast in terms of, I guess, a leadership insight or a gem or something that you'd want to maybe just share personally about your journey today?
Yeah, I think we've talked about kind of flipping the mindset around challenges. I think another really key learning is focusing your energy and using it really wisely. So I very quickly learned back with the first hand luggage ban that I couldn't influence the situation. I couldn't influence government policy on the hand luggage ban for terrorism. I couldn't influence Heathrow on when they were going to release the hand luggage ban, and I had to just focus on what I could control. And I've found that mindset shifts really useful. So really understand what it is you can control and don't sweat what you can't. I mean, there's just you need to use your energy so wisely. It takes so much energy to overcome some of these challenges that you just got to focus in on what you can do. And it kind of almost comes back to what you do as a business as well. So having a really clear vision as a business on what it is you do. So with Trunki, we made kids products, travel gear that help families go off and explore the world. There were lots of opportunities to get into toys, to even do adult suitcases, but that's not what we did. So it was saying no to an awful lot of stuff and just being really laser focused on being the best in the world at one thing. Really think about what you're good at, what the brand or business is good at, and just really focusing on that and try not to get too distracted.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally concur with that advice. And just finally then, Rob, in terms of OpenIntro, glad to see you're one of the experts on our platform. Just like to ask, why should people contact you in a sense? What will they get from spending some time with you?
Cool. I guess there's quite a few different areas where I can help. Obvious one being around product development in the consumer product space, kind of helping people get concept to shelf or anywhere in between, whether that be a new product for the range. That's an area I can kind of support. Having acquired a manufacturer in the UK and really vertically integrated our supply chain, I have some sort of bigger picture thinking around manufacturing and supply chain. But I guess what we're best known for is building that global brand and what you need to think about when you're building globally and how the different cultures see things differently. So lots of experience around that. And now, when I first started Trunki, you had to get a custom coded e-commerce site built. There was no Shopify. And now kind of e-commerce, marketplaces, Amazon is a really interesting area. So with my Amazon marketing agency, we really understand how you can go to market very quickly globally just using platforms like that. And we've touched on IP and design protection, brand protection, can talk about that. And having done the funding journey from angel investor, private equity to exit, obviously around those kind of areas can talk too. So kind of just general mentoring for any sort of product mainly based business that are kind of struggling or needing some some leadership or some thought, new thought. I guess it's kind of mentoring founders through kind of scaling, through setbacks and exits.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know you're incredibly busy, so thanks for taking the time to be with us this morning, and we'll stay in touch and look forward to following the journey with your new ventures, and wish you all the best of luck in the world, and thank you.
Great. It's been great to chat, and look forward to hopefully some people seeing this and being inspired.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Rob, and you take care.
Thanks.